The lottery ticket numbers were my children's birthdays, a sentimental whim that turned into $85 million in cold, hard cash. But as I stared at my fortune, my heart ached with a deeper question. Could my own kids see me beyond what I provided? Could they love their father, broken and desperate, when millions lay hidden in my hand? I decided to find out. I offered them nothing but my vulnerability and their true colors. They blazed. My name is Jonathan Price, and this is the story of how a father, blessed with fortune, tested the true measure of his children's love. Before I share these painful truths, please consider subscribing to Wise Revenge, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your quiet understanding, your presence here, means more than you know. Before that fateful Tuesday, my life was painfully ordinary. Though officially retired from my long career as a forensic accountant, I still took on small, part-time bookkeeping gigs at a local marketing firm in Portland. It wasn't the demanding 60-hour weeks I once knew, but it provided enough to supplement my modest pension, ensuring I could live somewhat comfortably, though never truly secure. My small apartment on the outskirts of the city was nothing fancy, but it was mine. Every morning I would wake at 6, make my coffee, and start my day with the persistent worry of bills and deadlines still hanging over my head. My family situation was complicated, to say the least. My wife, Sarah, and I divorced when our children were young. I raised them mostly alone, juggling work and fatherhood, always striving to give them more than I had. I have 4 children. First, my eldest, Michael, 36. Despite his charm and intelligence, he has never quite figured out his life. He bounces from job to job, relationship to relationship, and has made borrowing money from family something of an art form. The pattern was always the same. Desperate call, emotional plea, promise to pay it back, then radio silence until the next crisis. He'd borrowed thousands from me over the years, always with tearful promises of repayment that never materialized. Then there's my daughter, Emily, 30. She was always the golden child. She graduated from an Ivy League university, married a surgeon named David, and now lives in a beautiful suburban house with their 2 perfect children. Emily rarely asked me for money directly, but always expected financial backing for life's milestones. My contributions to her wedding, the down payment on her first home, loans for unexpected renovations. My second son, Daniel, 28. He's the practical one, always talking about responsible budgeting and sound investments. He works in tech, makes good money, but is fiercely independent, almost to a fault. Our conversations are usually about economics, not emotions. And finally, my youngest, Sophia, 25. She's the artist, a free spirit, trying to make it as a freelance photographer. She struggles financially, often living paycheck to paycheck, but she's fiercely proud and rarely asks for help. When she does, it's usually for a small, urgent need, like a broken lens or a gas bill, and she always insists on paying me back, even if it takes months. My history with financial assistance within my own children had left me jaded. I had emptied my modest savings for Michael's rehab that never happened. I put $3,000 on my credit card for Emily's wedding that was never repaid. I quietly helped Daniel out of a bad car loan once, and he barely acknowledged it. Sophia, on the other hand, often refused my help, determined to make it on her own. The only person outside my immediate children who knew the full extent of these patterns was my best friend, Richard. He was the voice of reason when I felt myself becoming bitter, reminding me that not everyone was out to take advantage. At my occasional accounting gigs, things were not much better. My boss, Arthur, consistently took credit for my ideas. My colleague, Derek, left early, leaving me to pick up his slack, yet always got the recognition. Despite being underappreciated, I kept my head down, hoping someday it would pay off. Buying lottery tickets was my one small indulgence, a weekly ritual my children loved to tease me about. Every Friday, I would spend $10. Emily called it a tax on people who couldn't do math. Michael joked I should just give him the money directly. Daniel lectured me about probability. Sophia, bless her heart, would just smile and say, "Good luck, Dad, maybe one day." But there was something hopeful about those tickets, a tiny chance at freedom I could not give up. I had dreams, to travel, to go back to school, to have enough savings that an unexpected car repair wouldn't send me into a financial tailspin. But these dreams seemed increasingly distant as I approached my late 60s, still paying off student loans, carrying a persistent credit card debt. Each month was a careful balancing act. I clipped coupons, compared prices. I drove a 10-year-old Corolla that made a concerning noise when it rained. I had mastered the art of appearing fine while constantly calculating costs, inventing excuses to stay home. This was my life before everything changed. Ordinary, often difficult, occasionally lonely, but stable in its own way. I had no idea how a single piece of paper was about to completely upend everything I thought I knew about myself and the people I loved most. The day I bought the winning ticket was actually my 68th birthday. I had just finished a grueling week at my part-time work, where Arthur had again taken credit for my financial strategy. I stopped at Gus's corner market. "Happy birthday, Jonathan," Gus called out. He was a kind, older man who had owned the store for over 30 years. "Thanks, Gus. The usual, please. And maybe one extra for good luck," I replied, handing him $20 instead of my typical $10. "Birthday splurge, huh? Maybe today is your lucky day," he said with a wink. Instead of a quick pick, I chose my own numbers. My birth month and day, 3 and 16, Emily's birthday, 12, Michael's birthday, 21, Daniel's birthday, 9, and Sophia's birthday, 30. 6 numbers that represented the most important people in my life, even those who had often disappointed me. That evening, I ordered takeout, opened a bottle of wine Richard had given me, and settled in for a quiet night alone. The lottery drawing was at 8 p.m., but I barely paid attention as I scrolled through social media, seeing posts from acquaintances enjoying far more exciting birthday celebrations. At 8:30, I remembered the tickets and lazily picked up my phone to check. The first number matched, 3. I smiled slightly. The second, 16. My heart rate picked up. Third, 12. Fourth, 21. By now my palms were sweating. Fifth, 9. I was holding my breath. Sixth and final number, 30. I stared at my phone for what felt like an eternity. This couldn't be right. I must have read something wrong. I checked again and again. I turned on the television and rewound to the live drawing. I watched as each of my numbers appeared. My hands shook so badly I dropped the remote. "No way," I whispered to the empty apartment. "No way." According to the lottery website, I was the sole winner of $85 million. After taxes, it would be somewhere around $51 million. An unfathomable sum for someone who had been excited earlier that day about a 10% off coupon for laundry detergent. I didn't sleep at all that night. Instead, I spent hours researching lottery winners online. What I found was disturbing. Stories of lives falling apart after windfalls. Families torn apart by greed. Friends and distant relatives appearing out of nowhere with sob stories. Winners bankrupt within 5 years, more miserable than before. One article called the lottery the quickest path to losing everything you care about. As the sun rose, I made my decision. I would claim the money, but I would tell no one. Not my children. Not yet. I needed time to process this, to make a plan, to understand what this money would mean for my life, before everyone else tried to tell me what to do with it. That morning, I called in sick to my part-time work for the first time in 3 years, and made an appointment with Philip Montgomery, an attorney specializing in financial planning. His office was in a downtown high-rise. As I sat in the waiting room in my ordinary clothes, clutching my purse with the winning ticket, I felt like an imposter. "Mr. Price," Philip greeted me. He was in his 50s, with salt and pepper hair and kind eyes. "What can I help you with today?" I took a deep breath and placed the ticket on his desk. "I need to know how to claim this without anyone finding out it was me." His eyes widened, then he nodded professionally. "I see. You have come to the right place." Over the next 2 hours, Philip explained my options. In our state, lottery winners could claim prizes through trusts or legal entities that would keep their identities private. He outlined the process of setting up a blind trust, how taxes would work, and the importance of assembling a team of financial advisors. "The biggest mistake winners make," he told me, "is telling too many people too quickly. Once that happens, there is no going back." I nodded, relieved that my instinct had been correct. I want to do this right. I do not want this money to ruin my life. As I left Philip's office, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. I had more money than I had ever dreamed of. Yet, I could not share this life-changing news with anyone. I would be living a double life, pretending to be the same struggling retired accountant while secretly being a multimillionaire. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with Philip to establish the trust, claim the winnings, and set up investment accounts. We created a comprehensive financial plan that would ensure I would never have to worry about money again, even if I lived to be 100. The money was real now, sitting in accounts under my control. Yet, my day-to-day life remained unchanged. I still went to my part-time gigs, still complained about bills with coworkers, still drove my old Corolla. The secrecy was starting to weigh on me. I found myself wondering about my children. How would Michael react? Would Emily respect my boundaries, or would Daniel calculate the benefit? Would Sophia, my independent artist, even care? These questions haunted me, and gradually an idea began to form. What if there was a way to find out how my children would react to my newfound wealth without actually revealing it? What if I could test their character before deciding who to share my secret with? The plan crystallized one night as I lay awake staring at the ceiling. I would create a scenario where I needed financial help. Not a huge amount, but enough to be significant. I would approach each child with the same story, the same request, and see who would help me without the prospect of gaining anything in return. Only then would I know who deserved to be part of my new life. The next day, I met with Philip again to ensure my finances were properly secured. We had established a diverse investment portfolio, set up trusts for future charitable giving, and created a modest personal account for accessible funds. The bulk of the money was safely invested, untouchable by anyone but me. "Everything is in order, Jonathan," Philip assured me. "Your financial future is secure. You could stop working tomorrow." The thought was tempting, but an abrupt lifestyle change would raise questions. "I think I will stay at my part-time job for now," I replied, "at least until I figure some things out." That evening, I invited Richard over for dinner. As we sat on my small balcony, I decided to share part of my plan. I couldn't keep everything bottled up. "I'm thinking about conducting a sort of experiment with my children," I began carefully. Richard raised an eyebrow. "What kind of experiment?" I took a deep breath. "I'm going to tell them I lost my job and need financial help, just to see who actually cares enough to help me when I need it." Richard's expression shifted from curiosity to concern. "Jonathan, that seems manipulative. Why would you do that?" "Because I'm tired of being the only one who helps when others need it," I said, not quite meeting his eyes. "I want to know who would be there for me if the tables were turned, who would see me as a father, not just a resource." "But lying to test people, that doesn't sound like you." Richard set down his wineglass. "Why not just ask them how they feel about you? Have an honest conversation." I laughed without humor. "Right? Because my children are so great at honest conversations. You know how they are, Richard? You've seen how they treat me. Still, this feels wrong. What are you trying to prove?" "I'm not trying to prove anything," I insisted, though that wasn't entirely true. "I just want to know who actually cares about me versus who sees me as a resource." Richard shook his head. "I think you're going to hurt yourself more than anyone else with this, but I know that look in your eye. You've already made up your mind." He was right. I had spent that day crafting my story, making sure it was believable, but not so dramatic that it would raise suspicion. I would tell everyone that the marketing firm had suddenly shut down after losing its biggest clients. I would say I needed $7,500 to cover rent and medical expenses until I found a new position. It was a significant amount, but not outrageous. I had thought through every detail, creating a scenario that would elicit sympathy without too many questions. I would say the CEO had been embezzling funds and the company was under investigation, explaining why I might not get my final paycheck. As for my job search, I'd say I was applying everywhere, but the market was tight, and my emergency fund depleted from recent medical tests. As I finalized my plan, I felt a twinge of guilt. Was Richard right? Was this manipulative? But then I remembered all the times I had emptied my savings to help Michael and Emily, Daniel and Sophia, often at great personal cost, and my resolve strengthened. This was not just about testing them. It was about protecting myself and my future. I made a prediction list. Emily, with her perfect life, would claim she couldn't help due to the kids' expenses. Michael, perpetually broke, would definitely say he had no money. Daniel, the financially responsible one, would lecture me about poor planning, but offer little practical help. Sophia, fiercely independent, might try to help with what little she had, but her pride would likely get in the way. The plan was set. Over the next week, I would reach out to each child individually, tell them the same story, and see who stepped up. Only then would I decide who deserved to know about my lottery win. Only then would I know who truly cared about me beyond what I could do for them. With a mix of anticipation and dread, I picked up my phone and made the first call. It was time to find out who my real children were. I decided to call my daughter, Emily, first. She had always prided herself on being compassionate, on her perfect family life. If anyone would help, I thought it would be her. My hands trembled slightly as I dialed. She answered, sounding distracted, a child's voice chirping in the background. "Hi, Dad," she said. "Is everything okay? You sound upset." I launched into my prepared story. The company suddenly closing, lost wages, my precarious financial situation. I explained unemployment would take weeks, and my emergency fund was depleted by recent medical tests. I didn't specify symptoms, allowing her imagination to fill in the blanks. "I hate to ask this, honey, but I need help. About $7,500 to cover rent and medical bills until I can find something new. I promise I'll pay you back." There was a long pause. I could hear David, her husband, murmuring in the background. "Oh, Dad, you know, David and I just put a down payment on a new luxury SUV. We're pretty cash poor right now." Her voice took on a defensive tone. "Have you asked Michael? He's single, no kids. Or Daniel, he makes good money in tech." I was hoping to avoid asking them, I said truthfully. "You're always so good with managing everything." "Well, let me talk to David and see what we can do," she said finally. "But I can't promise anything. You know how strict he is with money, especially when it comes to, well, you know, family finances." I knew. David had always made it clear my financial problems were not his. "Sure, honey. Just let me know. The rent's due next week." "I will, Dad, and I'm so sorry about your job. These things always work out for the best, though. Maybe this is a sign you should look at changing careers to something more stable." After hanging up, I noted her response in my journal. She had expressed concern, but immediately looked for ways to pass the responsibility. I suspected her conversation with David would conveniently result in them being unable to help. The next day, I called my son, Michael. I chose a time I knew he'd be free. "You sound tired, Dad," was his greeting. I launched into my story, detailing the company closing, the sudden financial shock, and my desperate need. His face remained impassive as I spoke. When I finished, asking for $7,500, he sighed heavily. "Dad, I have always taught you about financial responsibility. This is exactly why I told you to keep 6 months of expenses saved. What happened to that plan?" "Life happens, son," I replied, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "Medical bills, car repairs. Not everyone can afford that much money. And now you expect others to bail you out? What about your spending habits? Do you really need that apartment in that neighborhood? What about your cable subscription?" For the next 20 minutes, he lectured me about financial planning, the job market, and living below one's means. Not once did he offer any actual help. "I would love to help you, Dad, but I'm focusing on my new business venture right now. I can't afford to dip into those funds. It would be financially irresponsible." He paused. "This will be a good learning experience for you. Sometimes we need to hit rock bottom before we make necessary changes." I nodded, fighting back tears that were only partly for show. Even expecting this response, it hurt to hear him dismiss my needs so easily. My own son, the one I had bailed out countless times, was lecturing me. My second son, Daniel, was next. He answered professionally, his voice calm. "Dad, I'm sorry to hear about your job. That's rough." I presented my story, emphasizing the suddenness, the unexpected medical costs. When I asked for $7,500, he paused. "Dad, you know I'm trying to save for a down payment on a condo. Every dollar is accounted for. Have you explored unemployment benefits thoroughly? There are also government programs for medical assistance." He listed several logical, rational options. "I could help you research some of these resources, Dad. I'm good with finding information. No offer of money, no emotional plea. Just practical advice, cold but efficient." "I appreciate that, Daniel," I said, a hollowness in my voice. "I'll look into them." He genuinely sounded like he wanted to help, but on his terms, without personal sacrifice. Finally, my youngest, Sophia. I called her with a mix of dread and faint hope. She picked up, her voice bright, then quickly softening as I told my tale. "Oh, Dad, no. That's awful. Are you really okay? What about your health?" Her concern felt immediate and genuine. When I asked for $7,500, her voice faltered. "Oh, Dad, I wish I could. You know how tight things are for me. My last photography gig barely covered rent. I have maybe a few hundred in my savings." A pause. But what if I could sell some of my prints? Or maybe I could come stay with you and help you organize your apartment to save on rent for a bit. Or I could try to get a loan. Her offers were small, desperate, but heartfelt. She was clearly distressed, trying to find a way. "No, honey," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "It's okay. Don't worry. Just take care of yourself." After a week of rejections, half-promises, and outright silence from 3 of my 4 children, I was emotionally exhausted. The experiment had confirmed my worst fears, but the reality was still painful to accept. 3 children, whom I had repeatedly supported, emotionally and financially, could not or would not return the favor when I needed them. Then my phone rang. It was my sister, Martha. I had not actually reached out to her yet, planning to call her after my children. The fact that she had called me first, after hearing about my situation secondhand, spoke volumes. "Jonathan, honey, I just heard about the job. Are you okay?" Her voice was warm with genuine concern. "I'm hanging in there," I said, the emotion in my voice now entirely real. "Listen, I want to help. Can we meet for lunch tomorrow? My treat, of course." The next day, we met at a small diner near her apartment. Martha looked exactly as she always did. Silver-streaked hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a cardigan with mismatched buttons. She hugged me tightly. "I'm so sorry about your job, sweetheart. That company never deserved you anyway." As we ate, she asked thoughtful questions about my job search and offered to reach out to former colleagues with business connections. Then, after our plates were cleared, she reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I want you to take this," she said, sliding it across the table. "It's $4,000. I know it's not the full amount you need, but it should help with the rent at least." I stared at the envelope in shock. "4,000, Martha. I can't take this. This is too much." "Nonsense. Family helps family, and I want you to know something else." She reached across the table and took my hand. "If you need a place to stay to save on rent, my sofa pulls out into a bed. It's not fancy, but you are welcome to stay as long as you need to." Tears filled my eyes. "Thank you," I whispered, overwhelmed by her generosity. "Now don't you worry about paying this back right away," she continued. "Get back on your feet first. Find a job you actually like this time. Life is too short to work somewhere that doesn't appreciate you." Driving home, I clutched the envelope containing $4,000, more money than I knew Martha could comfortably spare. The contrast between her response and my children's could not have been more stark. The only person who had offered genuine help was the one with the least to give. After meeting with Martha, I did some research that left me stunned. $4,000 represented nearly all of her savings. I discovered she had been quietly dealing with complications from type 2 diabetes. Her medication costs had recently increased, and she had been picking up extra tutoring work to make ends meet. The knowledge hit me like a physical blow. Martha, who had so little, had given me almost everything she had without hesitation or conditions. Meanwhile, my seemingly prosperous children, who spent thousands on renovations and luxury cars, couldn't spare $7,500 to help their father. Emily, who had recently spent $12,000 on a bathroom renovation, couldn't spare a cent. The next day, I invited Martha to my apartment for dinner. As she settled onto my worn couch, I noticed for the first time how tired she looked, the fine lines around her eyes deeper. "Martha, I need to tell you something," I began. Her expression remained open, curious rather than concerned. "What is it, honey?" "I haven't been completely honest with you. I didn't lose my part-time job. The firm is fine. I still have my position." The words tumbled out quickly. I made up the story to see who in the family would help me if I needed it. Martha was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I see." "Are you angry with me?" I asked, suddenly afraid of losing the one genuine relationship I had discovered through this experiment. She considered the question. "No, not angry. Sad, maybe. Sad that you felt you needed to test people this way." She took a sip of tea. "But I understand why you did it. Your children haven't always been kind to you." "Sophia was," I said, a faint smile on my lips. "She offered what she could. Bless her heart." "People show you who they are when giving becomes inconvenient," Martha sighed. She set down her cup. "My ex-husband, Robert, did I ever tell you why we really divorced?" I shook my head. The family story had always been vague. "I came into a small inheritance when my grandmother died, about $75,000. Not a fortune, but significant for us. Robert immediately had all these plans for the money, mainly investing in his friend's business ventures. I wanted to save it for our future, maybe buy a small house. We fought for months. One day, I discovered he had forged my signature and withdrawn most of the money. By the time I found out, it was gone, invested in a restaurant that failed within a year. She shook her head. When I confronted him, he said it was our money, not just mine. As if my name on the inheritance meant nothing. I was shocked. I had no idea. The family preferred the growing apart story. Less messy, she said. The point is, I learned that some people see you as a resource rather than a person. It's a painful lesson. I'm so sorry that happened to you, I said, squeezing her hand. It was a long time ago, but it taught me something important about money and relationships. She looked at me intently. Money doesn't just reveal who others truly are, Jonathan. It reveals who we are too, how we use it, how we share it, how we talk about it. It is a powerful mirror. Her words resonated deeply. In that moment, I made a decision. Martha, there's something else I need to tell you. Something big. I took a deep breath. I won the lottery 3 weeks ago. $85 million. Her eyes widened, but she remained silent, waiting. I haven't told anyone else. Not Michael, Emily, Daniel, or Sophia. You are the first to know. Oh, Jonathan, she breathed. That is life-changing. I know. And that's why I did this test. I needed to know who would be there for me without knowing about the money. Martha nodded slowly. I understand that. But what will you do now? That's what I'm trying to figure out. The money is secure, but I don't know how to handle my children. Martha considered. You know you don't owe anyone anything, Jonathan, not even me. But I want to help you, I insisted. Your medical expenses, a better apartment, whatever you need. She smiled gently. I don't need anything from you, sweetheart. I'm happy with my life. My apartment is small, but full of things I love. My car runs most of the time. I have my students and my books, and now this wonderful secret with my favorite brother. She patted my hand. Just knowing you are secure and happy would be enough for me. Her selflessness brought tears to my eyes. Here was someone who had given me almost everything when she thought I needed it, and now was asking for nothing in return when she knew I had millions. As we continued talking into the night, the contrast between Martha and my children became even more stark. While I had been conducting my experiment, word had spread among them about my supposed financial troubles. Instead of prompting concern, it had mainly generated gossip and judgment. My phone buzzed with texts from Emily. Heard you ask Michael for money too. You should have told me you were asking everyone. Feels like you're playing us against each other. Another came from Michael. Dad, Daniel told me you've been calling everyone for handouts. This is exactly the kind of irresponsible behavior you warned us about. My children had turned my request for help into evidence of my character flaws rather than an opportunity to show compassion. In doing so, 3 of them had revealed everything I needed to know about the true nature of our relationships. The morning after my conversation with Martha, I met with Philip to discuss my long-term financial plans. Now that I had clarity about my children's relationships, I could make decisions about my future with open eyes. I want to set up a trust for my sister Martha, I told him. Something that will cover her medical expenses and provide her with a comfortable retirement, but in a way that feels like a gift rather than charity. She's very proud. Philip nodded. We can structure it as a family trust that provides a monthly stipend. She wouldn't have to manage a large sum, which can be overwhelming for someone not used to wealth. Perfect. And I want to buy her a small house near wherever I decide to live. Nothing extravagant, just comfortable and accessible for someone with health issues. We spent the next hour discussing investment strategies, charitable foundations, and my own living situation. I had decided to give notice at my part-time accounting gig and focus on establishing a nonprofit organization aimed at helping elderly people living alone, inspired by Martha's situation. What about your children? Philip asked cautiously. Do you plan to tell them? I shook my head. Not right now. Maybe not ever. But I do want to arrange a family meeting to clear the air about my financial troubles. Later that day, I called Richard and finally told him the truth about everything, the lottery win, the family experiment. After his initial shock, he understood why I had kept it secret. So what now? He asked. Are you going to become one of those eccentric millionaires who still clips coupons and drives a beat-up car? I laughed. No, but I'm not going to suddenly start buying Bentleys either. I want this money to mean something, to do good, starting with Martha. She deserves it, Richard agreed. And what about everyone else? The ones who failed your test? I'm still figuring that out. I've called a family meeting for this weekend. I told them I have an important announcement. When Sunday arrived, I was surprised to see all four of my children show up at my apartment: Emily and David, Michael, Daniel, and Sophia. Even Emily's husband David called to say he heard about the meeting. Martha came last, giving me a secret smile. As everyone settled into my small living room, looking around with varying degrees of curiosity and judgment, I stood before them, feeling strangely calm. "Thank you all for coming," I began. "I know there have been rumors about my financial situation, and I wanted to address them directly." Emily shifted uncomfortably. Michael suddenly became very interested in his phone. Daniel adjusted his glasses. Sophia just watched me. "The truth is, I am fine. I have found a new position with better pay and benefits." This was technically true, as I had just appointed myself executive director of my new foundation with a modest salary. I will be transitioning to that position next month. "Well, that's wonderful news, Dad," Emily said with obvious relief. "We've all been so worried." I noticed my children's faces relax. They had come expecting either to be asked for money again, or perhaps to stage some sort of intervention. Instead, they were getting good news that required nothing from them. "So why all the drama about needing money?" Michael asked, his tone accusatory. "Why ask everyone for help if you had a job lined up?" I met his gaze steadily. "The job came through recently, and when I was in trouble, I reached out to my family. That is what family is supposed to be for, right?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. "Well, we all have our own financial commitments, Dad," Emily said defensively. "It's not always possible to help even when we want to." "Of course," I agreed. "We all have to make choices about our priorities." I turned to Michael. "Speaking of which, Michael, I noticed you never responded to my messages when I needed help, yet you had no problem asking me for $5,000 last Christmas for your rent." He had the grace to look embarrassed. "I was going through some stuff. I didn't have any money to give you." "You didn't even call me back," I pointed out. "That would have been free." I then turned to Daniel. "And Daniel, your advice was very practical, but I needed a father, not a financial consultant. No offer of practical assistance, just a list of government programs." Daniel looked uncomfortable, but held my gaze. "And Sophia," I said, my voice softening slightly. "You offered what you could, even though you had so little. That meant more than any amount of money." Sophia looked surprised, a small blush rising to her cheeks. The meeting continued in this vein, with me calmly but firmly addressing the hypocrisy and absence of support I had experienced from 3 of my 4 children. No one admitted wrongdoing. There were excuses, justifications, and even some attempts to turn the blame back on me for making everyone feel guilty. As they filed out after an uncomfortable hour, I felt a strange sense of closure. I had not told them about the lottery win, but I had stood up for myself in a way I never had before. The money had given me something perhaps more valuable than wealth itself, the courage to see my relationships clearly and to set boundaries accordingly. Martha stayed behind after everyone left, helping me clean up. "You did well," she said quietly. "That couldn't have been easy." "It was actually easier than I expected," I replied. For the first time, I was not afraid of disappointing them because I realized their opinion of me was never based on who I really am. Martha smiled. "That's a powerful realization, so what happens next?" "Next," I said, "we start looking at houses for both of us." 1 year later, my life was unrecognizable from the day I had first discovered those matching lottery numbers. I had moved into a beautiful but modest home in a quiet neighborhood with a garden that brought me joy. Just 3 blocks away was Martha's new house, a single-story craftsman with wide doorways to accommodate her walker on the days her diabetes made walking difficult. My nonprofit organization had grown beyond my expectations. We provided companionship, home repairs, and financial assistance to elderly people living alone, with a special focus on those estranged from their families. The work was rewarding in a way my accounting career had never been, and we had already helped over 200 seniors. Richard had eventually joined the organization as our outreach coordinator, bringing his nursing expertise and compassionate nature. He and I still had our weekly wine nights, though now they took place on my comfortable patio rather than in my cramped apartment. My relationship with my children had shifted into something more distant, but also more honest for some. I maintained occasional contact with Michael, Emily, and Daniel, polite birthday calls and holiday gatherings. but the pretense of closeness had fallen away. Without the expectation of emotional intimacy that had never actually existed, our interactions became less painful. My relationship with Sophia, however, deepened. She visited often, sharing her photography projects, genuinely interested in my life. None of my children knew about my lottery winnings. As far as they were concerned, I had simply found success with my new career in nonprofit management. They seemed to accept this explanation without much curiosity about the details, which told me everything I needed to know about their true interest in my life. There had been moments of temptation to reveal the truth, particularly when Michael called asking for money for a new business venture, or when Emily complained about the cost of her kitchen renovation, or Daniel discussed his condo investment strategy. But each time, I remembered the silence when I had needed help, and the choice became clear. Interestingly, there had been occasions when my children genuinely needed assistance, unaware of my hidden hand. When Emily's husband, David, faced unexpected medical bills from a car accident, I anonymously paid them through the hospital's patient assistance fund. When Michael faced eviction due to a failed venture, I anonymously covered several months' rent. When Daniel's startup almost failed, I connected him with investors through Philip's network, discreetly ensuring his success without him knowing I was involved. Sophia, struggling with an expensive photography project, found an unexpected grant from a newly formed arts fund, a fund I quietly established. They never knew the source of these gifts, and I preferred it that way. Martha and I had dinner together at least twice a week. Her health had improved dramatically with proper medical care and less financial stress. She had retired from teaching but volunteered at a literacy program 3 days a week, still sharing her love of books with children who needed it. "You know what still amazes me?" she said one evening as we sat on her porch watching the sunset. "How differently everything could have turned out if you had announced your lottery win right away." I nodded. "My children would have suddenly become very attentive and loving, I imagine. And you would never have known what was real," Martha added. "That knowledge, painful as it was, gave you freedom." She was right. The experiment had been painful but illuminating. It had shown me who deserved a place in my life and who did not. It had revealed the true nature of relationships I had spent years trying to strengthen, despite their fundamental imbalance. The greatest lesson I had learned was not about others, but about myself. Before the lottery, I had defined my worth by what I could give to others, constantly trying to earn love through sacrifice and generosity. I had allowed myself to be used because I believed that was what family meant, what love required. Now I understood that real love, the kind Martha had shown me, did not keep a balance sheet. It gave freely without expectation of return, but it also respected boundaries and dignity. It was honest and consistent, present in good times and bad. I had initially kept my winning secret out of fear, worried that money would corrupt my relationships. What I had not anticipated was how the secret would clarify them, instead stripping away pretense and revealing truth. The money had not changed who anyone was. It had simply illuminated who they had been all along. My life now was rich in ways that had nothing to do with my bank account. I had purpose through my foundation, genuine connection with Martha and Richard, and a hard-won understanding of my own worth that no external validation could shake. Perhaps most importantly, I had peace. The constant anxiety about finances that had been my lifelong companion was gone, but so too was the desperate need for approval from people incapable of giving it. I had built a life aligned with my values rather than my insecurities. Martha reached over and patted my hand, bringing me back to the present moment. "You did good, kiddo. Not just with the money, but with what you learned." I smiled at her, overwhelmed with gratitude for this woman who had shown me what family truly meant. I had a good teacher. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. From the shock of those matching numbers, to the pain of rejection, to the joy of creating something meaningful with my unexpected fortune. The money had changed my life, yes, but not in the ways I had initially feared or hoped. It had simply given me the freedom to see clearly and choose wisely. The most valuable thing I had gained had nothing to do with millions in the bank. It was the understanding that the people who deserve a place in your life are not those who are there when you have everything to give, but those who stay when you have nothing to offer but yourself. Have you ever had to test someone's loyalty in your life? What did you learn from that experience? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe to hear more real-life lessons that might change your perspective. Remember to share this video with someone who might need to hear that their worth is not determined by what they can give to others. Thank you for listening, and may you find the clarity to recognize the true relationships in your own life.